When we hear the acronym AI, most of us immediately think of artificial intelligence, algorithms, machine learning, or even I'll ask ChatGPT that. But in this context, I want to talk about a different AI, Appreciative Inquiry, along with its close companion, Appreciative Living. These frameworks offer a reflective pathway for leaders, helping us recognize the best in others, shift our thinking toward possibility, and make values based decisions that ripple through our organizations. Drawing from Kelm's Emergent principles, let's explore how AI and AL can help shape reflective leadership and improve decision making across contexts. These human centered approaches offer transformational ways to lead, reflect, and grow, especially in emotionally complex fields like education and nonprofit work. Kelm's five emergent principles of appreciative inquiry represent a modern evolution of the original AI framework. These principles, wholeness, enactment, free choice, awareness, and narrative, guide us not only in how we feel, but in how we listen, frame decisions, and reflect on what truly matters. They remind us that leadership is deeply human, relational act, and that reflection is the bridge between intention and impact. Emergent principles are not theoretical, they're actionable. AI and AL directly support reflective leadership by aligning Schoen's 1983 concepts reflection in action, thinking during a moment, and reflection on action, learning after the fact. For example, wholeness enables leaders to reflect on how individual decisions affect entire systems, echoing systems theory approaches in special education or trauma informed care. Awareness helps leaders respond to stress or conflict more intentionally, reframing internal narratives with self compassion and strategic focus. In my own context, this reflection helps me regulate emotional responses during challenging IEP meetings or nonprofit crisis planning, avoiding reactionary decisions and instead asking what's strong here, what's possible. Let's dive into each of these a little bit more. The principle of wholeness asks us to engage the whole system. In reflective leadership, this means seeking diverse input before making a decision and reflecting on whose voice might be missing. In my role as a special education case manager, this means listening deeply to families and students and learning coaches, whoever is involved and is one of those stakeholders. At our warming shelter, it means volunteers and guests are a part of that policy reflection. That means people with lived experience and in homelessness should also be a part of those decision making processes. This inclusive approach enhances self awareness by expanding perspective while also promoting better decisions that reflect the whole ecosystem. Enactment emphasizes that we don't wait for change, we live into it. Reflective leaders ask, what would this look like if it were already true? In my classrooms, I lead as if my students are already independent thinkers, giving them agency early. At the shelter, we treat each guest as if they belong, because they do. Enactment turns vision into practice, encouraging leaders to reflect not only on what they say, but how they model change. Free choice invites reflection on how we involve others. Leaders who enable choice reflect on their own control needs and consciously create space for autonomy. In my classes, this looks like offering students flexible ways to demonstrate their own learning. At the shelter, it looks like assigning volunteers to those roles they feel most passionate about. Reflection here means examining power dynamics and building systems that invite authentic engagement. Awareness is perhaps the most personal of the five. It asks us to recognize our own assumptions, triggers, and filters. Reflection deepens when we ask not just what happened, but how did I experience it and why? I use this principle when I feel defensive during difficult conversations. What's beneath that? What belief is being challenged? Awareness increases emotional intelligence and invites thoughtful, self aware leadership. Narrative reminds us that reflection is also storytelling. What stories do we tell about our teams, our students, ourselves? Narrative reframes setbacks as growth opportunities and highlights what's going right. When a student self advocates or a guest returns to volunteer, we share these stories and invite others to believe in their own potential. Reflective leaders use story as both a mirror and a map. When leaders reflect using these principles, decision making shifts. We pause longer. We ask better questions. We recognize what's already working and grow it. Wholeness helps us widen the lens. Enactment invites us to lead from vision. Free choice promotes equity and buy in. Awareness slows reactivity. Narrative strengthens culture. Together, they support systematic, human centered decisions across contexts. So let's make a little checklist. Appreciative living and appreciative inquiry are more than just frameworks, they're daily practices. They ask us to reflect deeply and lead with optimism and bring others along by finding good and amplifying it. Kelm's emergent principles offer us five invitations to see more, listen more, trust more, and ultimately lead from the very best in ourselves and in others. The principles don't just foster self awareness, they change how we lead. Inquiry supports listening first cultures, improving that psychological safety. Choice increases leader resilience, encouraging growth mindsets, even in policy level decisions. Passion keeps leaders purpose driven, reducing burnout by anchoring them in meaning. Leaders grounded in AI and AL frame challenges as invitations to evolve. They lead not from this deficit lens, but from a strength spotting and long term visioning. Finally, I urge you to not overthink these ideas. Reflecting on what is working well and what you can improve on shouldn't bog you down. For me personally, my practice blends transformational, servant, and generative leadership in a few different examples. So, those IEP meetings, asking what's working well, shifting degrading sentiments or defensive dynamics into empowerment. Servant leadership, which is bringing those lived experience board initiatives at the warming shelter, celebrating deep rooted stories, building trust and belonging, as well as real world solutions. Generative, which is within those classroom environments, including that virtual classroom, is embedding that appreciative language, including what small successes did my students have today, cultivating curiosity, belonging, and collective wisdom. This transformative of leadership helps find the best in others. We focus on strengths, student autonomy, volunteer dedication, family resilience, in order to boost that self efficacy and classroom engagement. This enables us to unleash this positive core. So it shifts us from what's wrong to what's possible, which I loved from a recent lesson. And it uses this hopeful language that fuels innovation and cohesion. By modeling desired values, we foster generative leadership and begin to act as if. Through these gratitude practices and daily appreciation, AL gradually shapes positive automatic responses. By weaving in stories from BIPOC and lived experience leaders, we surface and challenge assumptions, especially in policy and program development. So, appreciative inquiry and living aren't just lenses, they're active living practices. They ground us in generosity and storytelling and mindful intent by embracing the following principles. We empower others to lead. We shift culture from blame to possibility. And we open ourselves to a braver, more inclusive leadership. Thank you so much for joining me.